There's a distinct difference between services on your Homelab that you host and services on your Homelab that you actually use. Today, I thought it would be fun to go through everything on my Homelab and show you guys what I actually use versus what kind of just exists there because I set it up or tried it out at some point. At the end, I'll also talk about some services that I plan on hosting in the near future. As a note, I am a hobbyist. I'm not a professional, I'm not an IT guy, any of that. This is just a hobby of mine. So as I'm going through all of these, I'm just gonna give a lightweight explanation according to my understanding. This is not meant to be a detailed deep dive into any of these services, just a fun little explanation of what I have and what I actually use. So I'm just gonna start at the top of my list here and work my way down. First up, we have Dockhand. This one is almost brand new for me. Dockhand is a platform for modern Docker management. So it's basically a better looking and more powerful version of the Unraid Docker tab that you get out of the box. That's a bit of an oversimplification of what Dockhand actually is, but that's essentially how I'm using it. Instead of relying directly on the official Docker containers in the Unraid App Store, Dockhand relies on Docker images and Docker Compose themselves. I'm currently in the progress of migrating all of my containers over to use more traditional Docker methods instead of the Unraid App Store method. Dockhand still lets you see the status and health of your containers, stop and start them, and you can also configure it for easy access to containers' web UIs, just like you get in Unraid. It does have the additional upsides of being able to schedule updates, see logs easier, and get all of the advantages of the full power of Docker Compose, which I'm admittedly still learning a lot about. Next up, we've got Bookstack, and this is actually a perfect example of why I'm trying to migrate to Dockhand. In Dockhand, I could have put both of these containers in the same Docker Compose file and have them connected that way, instead of having two distinct containers on my Unraid. Anyways, let's talk about Bookstack itself. I did a whole video on setting this up, so if you're interested in Bookstack, go ahead and check that out. But Bookstack is basically a self-hosted wiki. I use it for writing instructions for my friends and families to be able to use the services that I set up like Mealy and Jellyfin. This way they can access things on their own and get instructions without having to wait for me to reply. So it's kind of a win-win situation. It reduces the amount of tech support that I have to do for these services, and it increases my users' abilities to set things up on their own instead of waiting around for me to reply to a call or a text. Theoretically, this would reduce the tech support that I'd have to do a lot more if I properly wrote out guides and instructions for all of the services that people might be using. I still need to get on that. One of the downsides is that you still have to write all of those guides and instructions in a clear and concise manner, and that takes quite a bit of time. And honestly, sometimes I would rather just tinker with other things or do something else entirely instead of writing down technical documentation. In the future, I would also like to use this as kind of a repository or knowledge base for my Homelab setup and configuration for what hardwares I have, update logs, what softwares I'm running, what versions of containers there are, how I have everything plugged into my switches and networking gear and all of that stuff. Both the family tech support and the Homelab guide/wiki are very appealing to me. It just requires a little bit more work in writing things than I've been willing to put in so far. Overall, I don't use Bookstack very much, but I can see myself using it a lot in the future. Next is Image, a self-hosted alternative to Google Photos. This is another service that I have a full-length video on getting set up if you're interested in doing that. I use Image to back up all of the images and photos from my phone instead of using a service like iCloud or Google Photos. That way I can be assured that I own my own photos and videos and have full control over them. And I know that they aren't being used by companies for data mining, AI training, or other nefarious purposes. I honestly love it. It just keeps everything automatically updated and I can access it from anywhere. And after setting it up, it kind of has just worked for me. It's been great. I highly recommend it, and it's not too difficult to get started either. Although it can be quite demanding on storage if you have years and years worth of photos and videos that you want to back up, so keep that in mind. Although it can be quite demanding on storage, I still would prefer to buy a few hard drives and own all of my data instead of paying a subscription service, and that's including the crazy price of hard drives these days. Now I've got a bunch of network services. Cloudflare's DNS and Unraid Cloudflare's tunnel work together to allow me to expose my services to the internet in a mostly safe manner. So instead of having to remote into my network and go to the IP address and port of a container, I can just go to an actual secured web address to access that app. I'll probably do a more in-depth video about this soon to show you how to set it up on your Unraid server, but this is essentially what these two containers help me do. After the Cloudflare stuff, we've got Caddy, which is a reverse proxy service that, if configured properly, will allow me to also expose certain services to the internet. I honestly don't really understand how it all works yet. I'm still learning about reverse proxies and getting things set up. I tinkered around with it for a few hours a few months ago to try to expose my Jellyfin server to the internet so that I could do remote streaming. Unfortunately, because I live in an apartment complex and don't have full control and access of some of the ports and the networks around mine, it was really difficult for me to get this set up, and I kind of hit a bit of a brick wall. I haven't used Caddy since, so this is kind of just sitting here until I move and can do something else with reverse proxies, which is, again, a video I plan on doing in the future. The next service here is one that I use constantly. Pi-hole is a network-wide ad blocker that works as something called a DNS sinkhole. Basically, you configure this to be your DNS server in your router settings, and all of the internet traffic on your network will go through Pi-hole. It has a big long list of blacklisted IP addresses that are known to resolve to ad domains or tracking domains. And if something passes through your network that is on this list, Pi-hole will keep it from resolving properly. This effectively blocks ads across your entire network, whether or not you have browser extensions for that installed. It also works for things like mobile games, which is honestly kind of my favorite when I'm playing solitaire and I don't have to watch all the mobile ads because I refuse to pay the subscription to play solitaire on my phone. Anyways, some notable exceptions is that this doesn't work for things like YouTube or Netflix, as those platforms usually serve their ads through the same trusted domains as the rest of their content, specifically to avoid things like this. Pi-hole is another service that I have a full-length video on, and I would highly recommend checking that out. Even if you're not interested in the ad blocking side of things, I think it's a pretty educational experience to go through and get it set up. The last service in this folder is called Newt. Newt is the client-side service for Pangolin. So the two basically work together to give you what is effectively a Cloudflare tunnel, but hosted on your own machines. So instead of tunneling into Cloudflare, you tunnel in from a client machine into a different host machine, both of which you own or have access to, and expose things to the internet that way. The reason I have Newt is actually because I pay for a VPS, or a virtual private server, from Hetzner. This hosts my Pangolin side of it so that I can have a tunnel to expose, again, Jellyfin. The reason that I use this for Jellyfin instead of a Cloudflare tunnel is because for the free version of Cloudflare tunnels, they have terms of service conditions preventing you from streaming high quality video over their tunnels unless you have the paid version. So instead, I rent a server through Hetzner as a VPS, and I have Pangolin hosted there, and I tunnel out just so that I can expose Jellyfin for remote off-network streaming when I'm on the go or something like that. Again, when I move, I plan on canceling this subscription and just using a reverse proxy for this one specific app, and we'll kind of just see how that goes when we get there. Overall, this is only used for one service, so not super heavily used, but it does play a pretty critical role in my Homelab. All right, so next up is Authentic. So Authentic is an open source identity / security provider. So you know how sometimes when you go to a website, it'll ask you if you want to sign in using Google, and then it does this whole OAuth process so that you can just use your Google account for a bunch of different services instead of creating new accounts for everything. Authentic is basically that, but self-hosted. So I use it to sit as a security layer between the open internet and the services that I do have exposed to the internet so that only certain people can access that content that is exposed. Generally speaking, I try not to expose any services that don't strictly need to be exposed to the internet, but for those that do, I set up Authentic to have an OAuth sign-in to make sure that only registered users are accessing this content instead of just random people sucking up my system resources. This also makes it really nice for my users because they only have one username and password that they need to remember for all of the different services, whether it be they're trying to log into Image or Jellyfin or Mealy or whatever. It's just the same account, which really simplifies other people using these services. There's a ton more that you can do with Authentic than what I'm doing, like setting up LDAP servers and having robust user, organizational, and role-based security. But for what I use it for, I'm just using kind of some of the basic features. I would highly, highly recommend Authentic or something like it to secure your public-facing apps, and this is something that I use essentially every single day. All right, let's talk about some home management apps. First up is Mealy, and by far this is one of the apps that I use the most. It's a recipe management app that lets you create and manage recipes. It even has a cool little web scraper that will automatically add recipes to your cookbook just by inputting a URL. It's got some cool features like robust meal planning and grocery list creation, and lets you even filter recipes based off of certain tags or other characteristics. You can even just enter in some ingredients that you have on hand, and it will actually recommend you a few recipes that you can cook with those ingredients. The downside to this is the same downside of a lot of apps that I haven't used very much. It can take a lot of effort to get all your recipes in here, tagged properly with the right serving sizes, with pictures, all that kind of stuff. It can be kind of a tedious process. If you're just importing recipes, then it's a little bit easier, but if you're trying to digitize a family cookbook, it does require quite a bit of manual work. My wife and I mostly just use this to store our recipes and to help us meal plan a little bit occasionally. I did a whole video on setting this up actually with Authentic, so if you're interested in Mealy or Authentic, go ahead and check out that video. Now, Homebox. Homebox is basically an inventory management system, but built for the home instead of like an enterprise warehouse or something like that. It lets you create locations and enter in your items with all sorts of information. You can enter in things like where you got that item from, what its value is, and other important info. You can even store user's manuals and warranty information easily, which is what I use it for most of the time. I started this originally just to have a centralized location for all of those miscellaneous manuals and warranty information for appliances around the house. That way I could just throw away all the pesky paper versions and have a digital version of anything that I need when I need it. To be honest, I haven't really used Homebox since I got everything set up because again, it kind of has the same problem as Mealy where it takes a lot of time to manually enter in all of the things that you have and to get manuals and all of that kind of stuff. But I did recently learn of a potentially very important second use case for Homebox, and that's for insurance claims. For example, a lot of home insurance policies require you to have an itemized list of everything that you own to properly honor your claims in the event of a flood or a fire or something like that. And Homebox can actually act as kind of that itemized list of everything you have, what it's worth, what that warranty information is. So in the event of a disaster, you already have all of that information there instead of having to fight over claims of what you do or don't own. I love the idea of Homebox, but I'm definitely not using it to its fullest potential. Next up on the list of services that I'm not using to their full potential is Paperless NGX. Now this is a super common application to come across when you're looking at what people self-host, and it's an open source document management system that supports OCR or optical character recognition that basically lets you search based on the contents of your documents, not just based off of tags, metadata, or titles. It has a ton of cool features, but for me, ultimately, it hasn't proven to be especially useful. I have a handful of documents in there related to my dog's surgery last year, and that's about it. I'm sure that just about anyone could make use of this for things like tax documents or anything else like that, but for me, I already kind of have a system for all of my tax documents that I keep somewhere else, and I don't handle a lot of other documents in almost any capacity where I would need it in something like Paperless NGX, so it's kind of just sitting here, not doing very much. Even though it's not doing very much for me, I did create a full-length video on how to set that up, so if Paperless NGX sounds like it'll be up your alley, go ahead and check that out. Alright, the next section is all about AI. I haven't dived very far into local LLMs yet, but I plan to in the future. Unfortunately, I only have a 1066 gig in my server, so it's not a particularly powerful graphics card, even when it came out. However, that does let me tinker a little bit with some AI-based tasks. First of the AI things that I've tried to tinker with is N8N. So N8N is a popular AI automation workflow platform planner automator thing. It lets you build automation pipelines basically to complete certain tasks for you. They particularly pride themselves on AI integration and agent orchestration. I would like to play around more with something like N8N, but I haven't really found areas of my life where I feel like it's particularly necessary to have automated AI workflows running at regular intervals. When I do get to that point though, I'll probably look a little bit deeper into some open source tools instead of N8N. The next AI service is Dockling Serve. Dockling is a tool for preparing your documents to be consumed specifically by LLMs. It's kind of like a middleman between text documents and large language models. It supports using various models for OCR and information extraction and can parse all kinds of different file types. I originally installed it for a specific project, but I eventually hit a dead end with it. I was trying to use N8N, Dockling, and a couple of other AI tools to essentially take pictures of my journals and extract the text from them into an actual text document and then handle translation from Spanish to English. The goal was to preserve some of my journals in another format instead of just written on paper. The models I was using struggled to perform well and just kept hallucinating to an unacceptable degree. This is a project that I will revisit when hopefully I have a little bit better of an understanding and AI compute on hand. So Llama's next up on the list of AI tools that I'm using. It's basically the easiest way to get models running locally on your machine. It's pretty awesome actually. I mainly use this just for downloading and managing my models, not actually interacting with them in any meaningful way. The real power comes in with the next service, OpenWebUI. OpenWebUI is basically a chat interface for interacting with and using the models that I download through Ollama. It provides a nice interface for chatting with models, creating agents, changing settings, creating tools for things like web search, and it even supports custom MCP servers. Basically, when you go to a normal large-scale LLM like ChatGPT or Claude, it's an interface like that, but you're using your own self-hosted models instead. I want to use it more than I currently do and switch away entirely from enterprise solutions like ChatGPT, Claude, or Copilot. I just don't have the hardware power needed on hand to truly have useless models going. This is something that I'm using more, but it's not super used right now in my home lab. If you would like a full dive into how to get this set up on your machine, let me know down below and I'll consider making that video. I think it's on the horizon though. The last few containers we have here for AI stuff are related to SeerXNG, which is an aggregated web searching tool. It will use various search engines and return the results in an easy to use by LLM format. I use SeerXNG to give web search abilities to any models that I'm running. Unfortunately, I need to find a more resilient solution, as too often when using web searching through my LLMs, it causes certain sites or search engines to refuse to give useful information when I'm actually getting a response from the LLM. The MCP SeerXNG and MCPO SeerXNG containers were my attempt at creating my own MCP or tool server for search instead of using just a normal SeerXNG container. Those are currently turned off because I kind of never got it to work and I just haven't revisited it. So that's enough AI stuff though. Let's talk media. I've got Audio Bookshelf and Jellyfin. As one might guess, Audio Bookshelf is basically self-hosted to Audible. I have all of my audiobooks stored on my server and use Audio Bookshelf to serve them to users. Conveniently, Audio Bookshelf also supports ebooks and has a built-in ebook reader in there. And that's about it. I'm starting to use it a little bit more now that I've finally gotten all of my audiobooks on my server, so we'll be interested to see how that goes. Next up is Jellyfin. At this point, Jellyfin likely needs absolutely no introduction, but I'm gonna do it anyways just for the sake of the new kids. Jellyfin is an open source, self-hosted media streaming platform. It lets you stream your own digital movies from your server to basically any device under the sun. I prefer to be able to buy and own my movies instead of paying never-ending subscriptions to watch content I'm not allowed to own, so I use Jellyfin to do that. I've got a full video on how to set up Jellyfin, including GPU hardware accelerated transcoding. If you're interested in hosting yourself, I would highly recommend it. This is by far my most used self-hosted service. Next up is my Linux ISOs folder, which you might notice doesn't look like it has anything to do with actual Linux ISOs. I'm not going to go into a ton of details into this right now, but this is my R stack. These apps are designed to automate obtaining, organizing, sorting, and tagging of media like movies and TV shows. If you're interested in a dedicated video on my R stack or how to get it set up, let me know in the comments down below and I'll make sure to go into a lot more detail. For right now, it's enough to know that all of these just help me organize my movies in a format that Jellyfin can use properly. Now here at the bottom, we have a handful of miscellaneous apps. Just a few days ago, I spun up a Home Assistant container for some smart plugs that I recently bought. I'm doing some super basic smart home stuff with it right now, although I would like to expand a little bit in the future. Like I said, I have a handful of smart plugs that I have around the house that I'm mostly just using for power monitoring, but I have a few automations in mind that I want to take a look at. For example, sometimes I'll set my 3D printer to do an overnight print, but I don't want it to be on after it finishes in the event that it finishes like 2 hours after I go to bed and it's just on idling for 5 or 6 hours or something like that. So I want to set up an automation that maybe when it detects a certain level of power draw from it, it will just automatically turn off, something like that, just to save a little bit of power. Like I said, I'm super new to Home Assistant, don't have a ton of smart home tech, but this is something I'm excited to explore a little bit in the future. Also, let me know down below what some of the home automations that you're using are. I'd be a little bit interested in trying some of them out. After Home Assistant, I've got SyncThing. So SyncThing is a continuous file synchronization program. Basically, you can set it to automatically sync certain files or folders across multiple computers. In the near future, I might use this to automatically sync files from my laptop to my desktop and vice versa, so that I can have all of my upcoming academic work up to date on both systems. Currently, I'm using it as a type of buddy backup with a friend of mine, where we both set certain folders of our Unraid server to automatically sync to each other. That way, in the event that one of our servers suffers a catastrophic loss, not all of our data will be lost because it's been backed up offsite. All in all, I like SyncThing so far, and I'm excited to expand my usage of it in the near future. Okay, so the last few containers here are services that I don't really use at all. Your Backup is an app that will automatically back up client machines to your server at regular intervals. You can set it to take an entire system image and back that up. Unfortunately, in my experience, this is not the easiest software to set up or use. I also had a rather bad experience recently that led to some catastrophic data loss of some very important data that I had. I don't know whether it was due to poor configuration on my end, but the problem ultimately boiled down to me believing that Your Backup had properly backed up my information because it had told me such. However, when I went to go and access that information, it was not accessible anywhere and didn't actually get backed up, despite it saying that it had been. I have yet to tinker with this again to set it up for my new system, and I will likely honestly look into other software for complete system image backups, as my faith in Your Backup is kind of lost at this point. Next up is Chrome. Now, I use this container for a very specific purpose. I needed to access my router settings, but I wasn't on my home network. So since I didn't have Tailscale or any other sort of centralized management setup on my router, what I did was I remoted into my Unraid server and then used my Unraid server to download Chrome. That way I could access the web interface for configuring my router. I only used it that one time for that one very specific thing, but I keep it installed just in case I need to do something like that in the future. The last two containers here are game servers. One is for Clone Hero, which if you don't know is like a computer version of Guitar Hero or Rock Band, where you can have all of the songs all at once. I wanted to set up my own server so that me and my friends could play multiplayer online on our own server, but I never quite got it working, and I have another friend who kind of just hosts it also, so we've just been using that and I haven't bothered to look at it again, so this is almost useless. The last one is Foundry. So Foundry is a virtual tabletop for role-playing games like Pathfinders or Dungeons & Dragons. Started looking at hosting it for a family member who runs regular games, but we ran into some trouble syncing his local assets with the server so that they would properly load in. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think syncing might be the solution to this problem. So that is a look at everything that I currently have on my server and what I actually use. I'm currently looking at setting up OnlyOffice to be hosted on my server so that I can have a Google Drive-like environment without having to use Google Drive. I'm also always on the lookout for new and useful and interesting things to host, so if you have any recommendations, please let me know down in the comments below. Also, let me know if you want a dedicated video on any of the services that I've mentioned that I haven't already made a video on. I would love to do that. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.